Hey everyone, how's it going? I actually attended MicroConf Starter for the first time last year. It was my first MicroConf, so it's a total honor to be here this year speaking to you guys and telling you some things that I know about running my business. So I'm here to talk to you about nailing your first info product launch. It didn't sound as cool as just nailing your first launch and didn't fit as well in the slides, so we kind of condensed it down a little bit. But I guess a little bit about me, who the hell is Adam Wathan? Why should you listen to anything I have to say about this sort of thing? Well, I'm a full stack developer. Like a lot of people out there, probably, I've always really wanted to take a software side project and turn that into a business, Build some cool SaaS thing on the side, hunker down, code away in my cave for a while, put it out there, get rich, be on the cover of TechCrunch, that sort of thing. So I don't know why I chose this picture. This is me speaking at a tech conference. This is where I normally do this sort of talking. It was a cool venue. It looked like a cool picture. Seemed like it would look cool up on stage. I don't know. So the very first product that I ever created was a SaaS app called Nitpick CI, which was a tool for sort of automating certain types of code review on PHP projects. And my process for kind of creating this application was one day I had an idea to build it. I got excited about it. I opened my laptop. I started coding away for months and months and months. And then one day I put it on the internet and tweeted it out and expected to get rich, and that didn't happen. Here's a picture of my Stripe revenue dashboard for that project. So that came out in November 2015. In total, it has done $3,650 in sales from 19 customers ever. Right? Not really like the best way to get started running a business. And it's really hard to grow this sort of thing when you are working full time, taking care of your family, don't have a lot of free time to push this sort of thing and try and grow it. So after this kind of flopped, I was looking for something else to do, some other way to kind of start earning a living online and maybe buy back some of my own time so I'd be able to afford to invest more of my time into other software products. So I decided to put together a book. So I wrote a book called Refactoring to Collections, which teaches PHP developers some functional programming principles. And this time I really, really, really wanted to do everything that I could to make sure that this launch was successful. So I started doing a lot of research, reading about other people who've had successful info product launches, figuring out how to do this right. And I launched this in May of 2016, so about 5 or 6 months after I launched the SaaS app. And on the first day, it did $28,299 in revenue. Thanks. In the first 3 days, it did $61,392 in revenue. 2 weeks after I launched this book, I quit my job and started working full-time on another info product, an info product that I was a little bit too intimidated to start working on when I had a full-time job. That was this course called Test-Driven Laravel, which is teaching test-driven development to Laravel developers, like a big comprehensive video course. You can see here it was a little bit of an ambitious product when you look at how it turned out, 166 screencasts and 22 hours of content. But I put this together and I released it in early access in November of that year, so about 7 months later. And on the first day, this product did $82,919 in revenue. I didn't do the same sort of launch period that I did for the other product, but just for comparison, in the first 3 days, it did $115,000 in sales. I've been working for myself now for just under 2 years with just these two products. And in total sales across this whole time period, the refactoring book has done $179,000 in revenue. The TDD course has done $468,000 in revenue for $647,000 in revenue. My first 2 years of business selling ebooks and courses online by myself. So, so I think I've been pretty successful at this stuff, and I think I kind of know what I'm doing. So I want to share some of the lessons that I've learned and some of the approaches that I've used to make this stuff work so well with people here in case they're interested in trying to get started working for themselves using info products as sort of that base. So why an info product in general? So you might know who Rob Walling is. Anyone ever heard of Rob Walling before? So I was very fortunate enough to actually be able to be the one who captured this moment on camera where Rob first Hadoukened the stair-step approach into existence. But you can see even Rob Walling, who's really smart, really successful guy, builds lots of great software products over his career, recommends starting with one-time sale products, But why, right? Okay, so one-time purchase products are way, way, way easier to sell than recurring products. I know when I see something that's even like $9 a month, it takes a lot to convince me to buy that. But I've spent $100 on a course before that I've never watched the videos for on an impulse buy. You know, how many of you have bought books or courses that you've never even opened the file, right? Now, is that something to aim for? Is that the sort of content that you want to create? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But it's easier to sell that sort of stuff. People buy it sort of aspirationally. I'm gonna get to it one day and everyone feels good about it. There's lots of things that I've paid for where I get an invoice in my inbox for a $4 recurring charge, and I didn't use the service that month, and I'm like, oh, that $4 is gone, and I didn't get anything for it. It's stupid. The other nice thing about like one-time purchase info products is that they can be finished. SaaS goes forever. You're working on it forever. You're always improving it. You're always doing stuff to grow it. An ebook, once you've finished the last page, I mean, there's some work that you can do to relaunch and try and sustain income and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's done. There's a finish line for this sort of thing. You can put them together pretty quickly too. My first book I wrote in nights and weekends, a couple hours here and there, between February and May, so like 3 or 4 months. Not really a ton of time to put something together. And they put money in the bank really, really fast. It's sort of the opposite of SaaS with that like slow ramp of death. In info products, you kind of have this terrifying cliff of death, but at least the cliff has all this money at the beginning that you get to take and put into your bank account, right? So they can be really good for just sort of building up capital and being able to bankroll your time so you can invest it into other things. So here's a tweet I saw the other day from Brennan Dunn, who's like a super awesome, smart, genius info product guy who's working on a new software product. And even this guy says selling subscription software is hard and that courses are easy in comparison. So it's a good place to start, even if you want to eventually get into software, because I still aspire to get into software, but now I have the ability to kind of look for ideas, work on stuff, and not be spending all my time at my day job and not having the free time to work on this sort of thing on the side. So how do you get started? So the first step is building an audience, right? I'm not going to get too deep into all this stuff because this could be like a whole talk, but it's really, really important that people trust you and think that you're the right person to teach them about something if you're going to create an info product to sell to them. And I think the other thing that's really important about having an audience is that, in my experience, having a large audience can basically make up for any other deficiency in your marketing strategy in terms of success. I know people who do everything wrong with their product launches but have massive audiences and still make tons and tons of money. A huge audience with a terrible launch strategy is going to make you more money than no audience and the perfect launch strategy. So lots of ways you can do this, right? If I had to distill it down to like one sentence, I would say, be helpful on the internet. And that comes in the form of blog posts, tutorials, screencasts, creating podcasts where you maybe interview people that know things about things. There's lots of things you can do to just be worth following and provide value to people, but I do want to share one specific tactic that's worked really well for me. So my buddy Wes Boss, who is a successful course creator that lives locally to me, he credits his success to specifically focusing on helping people where they already are. And the way that he does that is on Twitter. So he creates tweets like this, where he tries to figure out some interesting tip or useful tidbit of information that he can condense into a tweet and put it right in someone's timeline. It's not a link to go to a blog post to read about a tip. It's trying to help the person while they scroll. It's right there. So they're more likely to engage with it if they think it's valuable, they'll follow him or retweet it or whatever. So you can see like tweets like this for him get like 247 retweets, 1,100 likes. I do the same sort of thing, but for a different audience. So I focus on the Laravel audience, and I've been using the same sort of approach to share little tips and stuff and just figuring out ways to take what maybe would have been a blog post and turn it into a tweet and try to provide the same value right where the person is. So you might be asking yourself, well, you guys already have audiences. This wouldn't work for me. I don't have an audience. So I want to share a little bit of a micro case study with you that's kind of wild, but pretty interesting. This is my buddy Steve Shoger. Has anybody ever seen Steve on the internet before? Handful of people. So you can already tell this story might be getting interesting. So this is a screenshot of Steve's Twitter profile from September 2016. He had 436 Twitter followers, and you can see the sorts of things that he tweeted about were, oh, I picked up this new album today, and it was pretty cool. Nobody cares, Steve. FedEx is the worst customer service. They're the worst. He's not providing value. He's just doing typical social media updates, right? The way everybody uses social media. But he wanted to start growing his audience. So we got to talking and figured out, well, you know what, you're a really talented designer. Why don't you focus on trying to help developers get better at design using this sort of hot tip medium on Twitter? So this is one of his early tips on Twitter. This is when he only had like maybe 800 followers or something, 18 retweets, 246 likes. That's pretty good engagement. Compare that to a tweet. This is June 2017, by the way, so this isn't even a year ago. Compare that to something that he put out last month, 326 retweets, 2,210 likes. And now if we look at Steve's Twitter profile, in less than a year and a half, he's gone from 436 Twitter followers to 20,300 Twitter followers, just from trying to be helpful and helping people where they are. That's how he's built his audience, and it's worked really well for basically everyone that I've talked to about this tactic, and our specific audience of developers anyways, because developers hang out on Twitter. That's kind of the community. So the next step, once you kind of started building an audience, putting some of your ideas out there, picking the right ideas. How do you pick the right idea for an info product? So step one is have an idea. It sounds kind of silly, right? But if you're putting content out there, you're trying to help people, you're going to start sort of noticing, like, what do people think of you as authority in? What do people respect you for? What sort of questions do people ask you? And you're just going to have ideas. Put yourself out there, share the stuff that you know. Ideas will come to you. In my experience, trying to sit around brainstorming, figuring out the perfect idea has never worked for me. I just kind of have to do my thing, try and be interesting, share interesting stuff, and wait for some insight to come where I think I might be the right person to make something that can help teach people something. So some concrete ideas, though. What are you already putting out there that people seem excited about? What sort of content are you putting out there that gets the most engagement, that people really seem to get, excited about? Or what are you excited about that you think others will get excited about? What do you think you're maybe a little bit ahead of the curve on? This has always worked well for me. I am big in the Laravel community, but I pay attention to a lot of other communities, and I try and notice things that are going on there that I could sort of bring back. What do people think you're better at than they are? So what sorts of questions are people asking you? Hey, how would you apply this tip that you shared to this problem that I have? If people think that you're better than them at something, well, that could be something that's worth teaching people. I talked about this a little bit already, but what have you learned kind of outside of your watering hole that you could sort of bring back? You can be like the Christopher Columbus of programming knowledge. That's sort of like my angle anyways. So everything that I've put out so far, honestly, I'm not inventing new ideas. My first book, for example, was combining a lot of knowledge from the Ruby communities and JavaScript communities and then real functional programming communities and bringing that back to PHP and sort of curating that into something that was easy to learn from. Or my TDD course was the same sort of thing, taking stuff from the Java community, the Ruby community, and just packaging that up in a way where the people I'm teaching don't have to go through all the translation and effort that I had to do to sort of turn those ideas into something that I could apply where I am. Or what did you have to figure out by yourself, but you think was really helpful to learn? What did you have to work really hard to figure out? Well, if you had to work really hard to figure it out, then maybe you can make it easier for other people. Okay, test your idea. So a lot of the advice you'll hear is as soon as you have an idea, the first thing you should do is put up a landing page, try and collect emails, and see if people are interested in it. And that's not a bad way to go. It's a good way to go. It's an important thing to do, but I don't think it's the first thing that you should do. First of all, that doesn't work if you don't have an audience, because no one finds the landing page. No one's going to sign up because they don't know who you are. They don't trust you. But even then, I think there's other things that you can do to test ideas before you try and commit to a product and say, I'm going to make this thing if enough people sign up. Here's the sorts of things I do. Again, Twitter is kind of where I hang out. This sort of thing can work in message boards and stuff, depending on the community that you're involved in. But for me, it's Twitter. So I'm working on a Vue.js component design course right now. And before I sort of committed to it, I started trying to test out some of the things that I thought were interesting that I wanted to teach in this course through just these tip tweets. So I'd tweet something that tried to encapsulate some interesting idea and just see, does it take off? Do people think it's exciting? This tweet got like almost 1,000 likes. So that's kind of a good indicator that like, okay, people find this interesting. Maybe this is new to people. Once I start seeing that things are working in like a tweet format, I try and take that to something a little bit more in-depth or longer form. So what's been working for me lately is putting together really in-depth, high-quality blog posts. So in this case, I took a lot of the same information that was in that tweet, and other tweets that I'd put out, and put together a really comprehensive like tutorial step-by-step guide to this stuff, because there wasn't anything out there that was the best for this idea. So I put that together and tried to see, okay, do people go and read the blog post? Are people excited about that? What sort of feedback do I get? And that did really well too. So a little tip here, when you're trying to validate ideas in this way, just sort of dropping little tests and seeing what sticks, make sure that you are cataloging any good feedback that you get about this stuff from people, because it's going to be really useful later for marketing stuff that you do. So for example, I tweet something out and someone quote tweets it and said, this is the guide that I wish I had when I was learning about this. If you're working with Vue, new experience, whatever, read this, stuff like that. That's great stuff to put away somewhere so you can reuse it in other places. Step 3, define the product. So you have like an idea, a topic that you think you can teach to people. How are you going to package that up into something that people can buy from you and actually learn from? So I can give you some advice on this. In general, there's like 2 main formats that I've played with anyways, which is written format and then like video format. So like an ebook or a video course. And other people will do courses too that include multiple types of content, maybe worksheets, videos, a bunch of different stuff. That's also a great way to go, but I'm going to kind of think of it as like books and courses. It's kind of the 2 categories that I think about things in. So the first thing that you should think about is, for me anyways, I have to plan really, really small. For the very first book that I wrote, the only way that I could convince myself to get started was telling myself that I'm not even making a book. Like my plan was to make like a 40 to 50 page mini book with just some of my favorite ideas around this topic in it. And that sounds really achievable, right? It sounded like I can probably do that in 2 weeks of nights and weekends. It's like writing 8 really good blog posts or something. Because what's going to happen is it's always going to turn out bigger than you think it's going to be. There's going to be more content than you planned. It's going to be more work than you planned. So try and plan for something not too ambitious, because it's going to turn out bigger than you think, at least in my experience. Short books are still books. My book is 150 pages and it's full of code examples. There's not that many written words in it, really, and the pages are quite small. But that's a feature in a lot of ways. People don't want to read a 500-page book on something. If they can read something and it only takes them 4 hours to get through the whole thing and they have all that information, well, that has value too. A 3-hour video course is still a totally sufficient video course. Okay, other tips. Books are a lot easier to work on, especially if you have limited time. So if you're working a full-time job and you only have 45 minutes here or there, you can write in 45 minutes. It's very hard to record a video in 45 minutes. You can work on them in spurts, they're easy to go back and edit. You don't have to block off big chunks of time to work on it. So I don't think I could have done a video course as my first product while I was working full-time, but there's a lot of people out there that are already making video tutorials and stuff and putting them on YouTube and whatever. So if you already have experience with that and you're quick at that, that can still totally work for you. Courses are easier to sell at a higher price. So books have sort of a fixed market rate that people kind of expect to pay for them, right? If you try and charge $150 for a PDF, I have a hard time paying for that at that price, even if I know the value is there, because you're sort of conditioned to think a book is like $20 to $40, There's ways that you can increase the price of a book product that we'll talk about, but in general, courses are easier to sell at a higher price, but they're a lot harder to produce in the limited free time that you might have if you're working full-time on another job. Okay, next step, putting up a landing page. So you figured out you want to make a book or you want to make a course, you know what the topic is going to be. You've done some work to validate that idea by putting out other free content and seeing what sticks. Now it's time to put up a page that you could use to collect email addresses and get that next little level of validation to make sure that people actually are interested in this topic as a product and not just as a tweet or a blog post, right? So I'm going to walk through a coming soon page that I have up right now and talk a little bit about some of the elements that are there, why they're there, and that sort of stuff. So again, I'm working on this advanced Vue course. So this is the landing page that people see when they show up. I start with a headline that's like the title of the product, some information that kind of explains to people what they are going to learn, what benefit they're going to get. So in this case, it's learn how to design simpler, more flexible components that are both more powerful and easier to maintain. Now, the big call to action here is to sign up to the list, right? I've seen people screw this up in a lot of ways. A lot of people will just put up a form that will say, sign up if you are interested. That's it, you know what I mean? that's not a lot of incentive to sign up. Like if someone's already following you on Twitter or whatever, they're gonna know when you release this product, I hope you talk about it when you release it on Twitter. So there's not really a lot of incentive to sign up if you just say, sign up if you're interested. So you have to figure out a way to make people want to give you their email address. So when you're first putting up a landing page, you might not have any free content to give away or anything, but if you do something like what I have here, you can still kind of promise free content previews as you get stuff done. So in this case, my kind of call to action here is sign up for free screencasts and a big discount when the course is released in May. So there's a reason for people to sign up, even though they're not going to get anything today necessarily. Next, start getting into a little bit of content. So I always try to start by using a little bit of evidence that I know what I'm talking about. So in this case, I'm linking to that guide that I put together that was on the same sort of topic. So if someone hits this page cold, which most people won't, most people are already going to be in my audience, but if they do hit this page cold, they can kind of see, okay, this guy wrote this blog post, maybe I'm going to go read that and check that out before I read the rest of this page. Or at least I can look at it, skim through it, and be like, okay, this looks like the real deal, like maybe I can trust this guy. The next thing is dropping in like little bits of social proof in places. So this is that tweet that we looked at earlier, just turned into a quote and thrown on the landing page. The guy who tweeted this, he's nobody special. He's not a big influencer or anything like that, but it still helps a lot to just have evidence from someone. Like how often when you buy stuff from Amazon, do you check the reviews first before you buy anything, right? It's not like Jennifer Aniston's review in Amazon that's convincing you to buy something. It's someone that you've never heard of or never met, but you just trust them because they're a regular person like you, and if they like it, well, maybe you'll like it. Next is just kind of outlining what I'm planning to do. So talking about the sorts of things that I want it to include, what it's going to kind of be. I don't get too into depth with these sorts of things. Like I don't try to do some crazy big page. There's lots of different things that you can do here. There's lots of stuff you can look into for different copywriting and landing page design techniques, but this has worked for me, just kind of keeping it simple. At the end of the page, I like to throw another sign-up form because a lot of people are just going to hit the page and sign up right at the top. Some people are going to need a little bit of convincing and want to scroll and read. So I'll drop another one at the bottom with a little bit more social proof, if I have any, to convince people to sign up if they enjoyed what they read. At the end, I always throw a little who am I section that just kind of says, in case you don't know who I am, here's me on Twitter, not just me as a name, which is useful because people can go to Twitter, see that I have an audience, see that people think I know what I'm talking about. Show maybe some of the other stuff I've worked on. In this case, I already have 2 products, so I link to those. I host a podcast, I link to that. I created a pretty popular open source project, so I link to that. Anything to sort of give me credibility, right? Link to my blog, conference talks I've done, stuff like that. Not everyone is going to have all this sort of stuff to link to, but this is the way that you should sort of be thinking about it, trying to figure out what can I do here to convince someone that I can be trusted and that I know what I'm talking about. So the more you can do here, the better. Okay, so a little bit of a side note here. Should I pre-sell my product? That's a question I get a lot. I've taken kind of both approaches with this. So the first product I released, I finished the whole product, launched it, and it was done, and that was it. The second product, I released it in early access once I had about 20% of the content done, and then continued to add new content to it after people had already paid me and I had new customers coming in and stuff like that. So how do you decide if you should pre-sell your product? So there's a lot of advantages to pre-selling your product. First of all, it's the best form of product validation you can ever get. Someone's willing to actually give you money for something before you've actually created it. Well, then you know that people are interested in this thing, right? So if you really want to be sure that people are interested in this thing before you make it, well, that's one reason to pre-sell. Second, you'll make more money. The reason that you'll make more money doing this sort of thing, in my experience, is that you have more opportunity to keep talking about the thing while it's available for sale. It's a little bit hard when a product is already done to keep promoting it, saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, without coming off as sort of spammy, at least in my audience. But if the thing isn't done yet, I can send out updates. I can say, just added 2 new lessons to the course today and link to the course. And it doesn't feel like I'm trying to just push people to buy something, but it does kind of keep that mind share and new people see it, new people go and buy it because it's already available for sale. Next, you might have more motivation to finish it. Everyone's different, but for a lot of people, if you already have people's money, even if you're starting to get a little bit burnt out or feeling like, oh man, like I'm sick of working on this project, if people have paid you money, you're probably going to get it done because You don't want to not deliver on what people have paid you for, right? That would really suck. You just don't want that. So for a lot of people, this can work really well in just keeping them motivated to get to the finish line. Another good reason is that if you're already maybe a freelancer or something and you sort of control your own time and you do a lot of client work, well, if you have like a successful sort of pre-launch, pre-order thing going on, you might be able to afford to do a little bit less freelance work and buy more of your time so you can spend more time finishing the product. Disadvantages though. The first one is that selling multiple tiers is trickier, in my opinion. It seems weird to put up like 3 different packages for sale. We'll talk about multiple tiers later in more detail. They're really important. Take my word for it now. But it's harder to say like, okay, well, if you buy the really expensive one, today you still get the same thing as whoever bought the cheap one. I don't really love that. It seems harder to get people to buy the more expensive packages, which are going to make you a lot of money, if they're not actually getting anything different than the people who buy the cheap stuff because the product isn't even done yet. Second, you can't easily change the scope of the project, this is a big one for me, because every single product I've ever put together, I wanted to include more than I ended up including, because eventually you get to a point where it's like, oh my God, am I ever gonna finish this thing? And cutting scope and deciding, you know what, I'm not gonna make these videos, I'm not gonna include this chapter, is a good way to sort of make it feel attainable and kind of motivate you to get to the finish line. If you pre-sell and you promise too much, you can end up in a situation like I ended up in, where it took me almost 1.5 years to finish the damn thing after I had opened up early access. And by the end of it, I was like so beat down, and it just wasn't a good situation to be in. I've never been happier than the day that I finally finished the content. It felt like a huge burden lifted off of me, because I felt like I had to deliver on everything that I promised, because that's what people paid for. The other thing is that it's like taking on debt. If you have a successful pre-launch, you make like $50,000 in the first day, you have a $50,000 loan that you have to pay back in like 3 months, it feels like. And that can be really, really stressful for a lot of people, myself included. So looking at it from like a purely objective point of view, like a very robotical, mechanical way, pre-orders will make you more money. They will validate your product better. You know, it's a good way to go. But from just a psychological point of view, it can be really stressful and it can be really hard. I know like when I launched my first product and it was actually finished already, that was such a great feeling. I just put it out there, put it up for sale, people started paying, money started coming in, and I was just sitting back like, oh, my work is paying off. Whereas the other product that did even more money on the first day, I was just kind of sitting in my basement like, holy fuck, I gotta finish this thing or people are gonna be so fucking angry. And it just wasn't a great feeling. It didn't have that same like exciting launch feeling that I had for the first product. Okay, building your email list. So you gotta build an email list. Building an email list is important. You wanna be able to talk to these people. So how do you do this? Well, the first thing that you should do, which sounds really obvious, is to tell your audience that you have this landing page that they can sign up at, right? Obvious, but there's one little tactic that I think is worth sharing that has worked really well for me, which is to announce that I'm going to announce the landing page before I announce it, and put it in people's heads that, hey, I'm about to announce this thing that I'm working on. It'd mean the world to me if you could share it. I really want to spread this as much as possible. This tweet itself doesn't get a ton of engagement, but a bunch of people see it, and then when you do announce it, well, I get 136 retweets, 542 likes for a page telling people I want to take their money at some point, right? Which is pretty cool. So then you announce it to your existing audience wherever they are. In my case, it's mostly Twitter and also an existing email list that I built up from other products. I'll let them know that I'm working on a new product too. And this is where you're going to get usually your biggest spike in signups for an info product like this, in my experience anyways. Everything is really front-loaded. So how do you try and keep people signing up? Because the worst thing that can happen is you get a few hundred signups on the first day, and then no one signs up ever again because they don't know about it. You know what I mean? And that happens to a lot of people. So some strategies for trying to sustain signups to something like this before it's released. Well, the first thing that you should be doing is sharing progress with your list, right? So what I try to do is every week or so, I try to send out an update where if I can, I include maybe some free content from the course. So in this case, this video wasn't even from the course, but I did a live stream to test out an idea I wanted to put in the course, and I linked to the live stream. But most of the time I'm sharing some free content, as well as any updates on like, oh, I got these videos done this week, we covered this topic, it's the best way to do X, Y, and Z, really excited about how this turned out. And yeah, so you should be doing this to keep your list engaged and keep them excited about the product, but sending these emails to your list isn't going to add new people to your list, right? So how do you add new people to your list? Well, anytime that I'm going to send out an update like this, I share it with my Twitter audience beforehand, a few hours before. So in this case, I'm sending out the first 2 preview lessons for the course this morning. This is what it's going to cover. It's going to be coming out at this time. Go sign up if you haven't already, if you want to get these lessons. I do this constantly, sending out another free screencast this afternoon. This is what you're going to learn. Or sometimes if I don't even have free stuff to send out, I'll just show behind the scenes stuff that doesn't even seem interesting, but people are still excited about it. Like this got 126 likes, and all of this is a screenshot of my Vimeo account showing like the videos that I've uploaded so far. Whereas the previous one only got 96 likes, and this was like, I'm going to send you some free shit that's going to be really helpful. But always linking to the landing page and getting people there so they can sign up. And this is what like my sign up chart looks like for this course right now. So you can see it's super, super front loaded, but there's still these little spikes throughout the rest of the time frame. And these are where I'm sharing updates on Twitter and stuff. That big one is where I was sending out the first 2 free lessons. Another strategy is to repurpose content. So if you're working on this part-time, it can be hard to find time to create new content specifically to market the course or the ebook. But what I do a lot is I'll take a chapter from the book and I'll massage that into a blog post, or I'll take videos from the course or one video from the course and turn that into a video that I post on my blog as well. So for this course I'm working on right now, for example, I posted this blog post recently, which is really just a lesson from the course with a new title slapped on it that made it make more sense as a standalone thing instead of just part of one of the course modules. And I mentioned, in this screencast, taking from my upcoming course, which there's a link, you can go sign up for it, blah, 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 you learn something cool. At the bottom, I throw another call to action to sign up to that same list directly from the blog post, and more people will sign up through this stuff. Now, for me, this stuff doesn't work as well as just sharing updates and stuff through social media. But it's easy because I already have the content, and it does help a little bit, so I might as well do it. So getting the actual thing finished. So this can be really hard, especially if you're working on it part-time. What's worked for me is to make public promises to my audience. So I'll do things like this. I'll send out a tweet saying, I'm going to send out an email on Monday where it's going to include XYZ that I haven't actually done yet. And if I promise this to people, then I have like some accountability. Even though really, do people actually care? Probably not. But I care because I don't want to feel like I'm lying to people. And this kind of keeps me accountable and keeps me motivated to actually deliver stuff. So I'll do this with screencasts even. I'll say, this week I'm recording the screencasts for this topic. I'm going to send out something free on Friday. And I haven't recorded anything yet, but now that I've said I'm going to send out something on Friday, well, I better damn well get some stuff recorded so I can send it out on Friday. Another thing is to email it consistently on a schedule. For my audience, once a week is pretty good. If I kind of have it in my head that I better email people once a week so they don't forget about what I'm working on and I can keep keeping people excited and engaged, I'm afraid to go a week without emailing people. And I'm also afraid to email people an email that doesn't have anything interesting in it. So this is just another way that I kind of keep myself accountable and make sure that I have something new to share with people. Another strategy we talked about a little bit already is just to reduce scope. If you find you've been working on this thing for 6 months and it feels like there's no end in sight, but you feel like what you have already is substantial, the best strategy to get to the finish line is to figure out a way to move that finish line closer to you. And I've done this on every single product, and it's been a great way to kind of get that motivation back to finish the thing. Once I can actually see the finish line and I know, okay, I got like 1 more week of work on this thing. Figuring out pricing. Okay, so tiered pricing, super important. Let's talk about some different options for tiered pricing and why they work. So the first option is to not do tiered pricing, do a single price. I did this for my testing course because I sold it in early access and it felt kind of weird to sell multiple packages. So what I did is I just opened pre-orders for just the top tier, so just the single price. Turns out people were willing to pay that price, which is $139 at the time, so I just never made the cheaper tiers, which was fine. So single tier products can be fine if you charge enough. If you're making a book that's $29, you're not going to make enough money to make it worth your while, unless you have an enormous audience, or you're trying to create a book just for credibility or for some other benefit that isn't directly monetary. Can be necessary if you're pre-selling because it's weird to pre-sell multiple tiers. Nice if you can't figure out how to create extra packages or add extra value. We'll talk about this in the next couple of slides. In general, prefer multiple tiers. So another option is 2 tiers. There's a couple different ways you can do this, but here's one way that I think is interesting that my buddy Wes does. He creates 2 tiers for his products where the real product is the second tier. And the first tier is like a crippled version of that only really exists to push people to the second one and price anchor it. So in this case, the 2 products are only $10 apart, but the second one has twice as much content. So if you're going to use 2 tiers, a good way to do it can be just as a price anchoring strategy, where the first product isn't the real product, it's just there to make the second product look like a better deal. A second tier is usually the real product, and prices are usually pretty close. Works well with video courses where it's easy to just cut content to make a cheaper version. Next option is 3 tiers. So this is what I did for my book, and this worked really well. We'll walk through kind of what's in each one of these. We're running a little bit low on time, so I'm going to try and get through this a little bit quickly. Great for books if you can come up with the bonus content, because books have that market rate, right? You want to be able to make a lot more than $29 per customer to make this worth your while. Makes it easier to evaluate the product on its own. So if you can include some bonus content, people aren't going to compare it just to an Amazon book anymore. They're going to try and evaluate it as its own offering and see if it's valuable to them. Good pricing strategy is usually 1x, 2x, 5x. That's what I've seen a lot of people do, and it's worked well for me. It'll make you a lot of money. So this is what I did for my book. The first package, $39, just the book. Second package, book plus some screencasts that were just videos of content that was already in the book, $79. Next package was the source code to my failed SaaS application included with the other stuff, because it included some stuff that was relevant to the content of the book. So here's how this broke down for me. The first package made $7,400. The second package made $24,800. And the third package made $29,000, even though it sold the fewest number of units. So this pushed my average sale price up above the price of the second tier. So basically, I was able to sell a book for an average of like $70 per customer instead of $29, because I threw in some of this bonus content, which wasn't really as valuable as the book, you know what I mean? But it was enough to get people to evaluate the product as its own offering and stop thinking about it as just a PDF that they might buy for their Kindle or something. So launch discounts. So remember when I showed you that landing page, we're talking about promising a big discount at launch? A couple things to know about discounts at a launch period that I think are good to know if you want to really optimize things. Discount it by enough to be appealing. I've seen people do like a 15% discount at launch. That's not enough to get me to buy it at launch instead of buying it 4 weeks later if I'm not super excited about the product already. I use stepped discounts. I'll show you an example of this in a second. But for my first product, I made the mistake of just using a 25% discount on every single tier. It's smarter if you can discount the heavier ones by more to try and push people up to the higher tiers. Third is reverse engineer your non-discounted price from your planned discounted price. Don't take a price that you want to charge and then discount it. Pick the price that you want to charge and then figure out, based on the discount that I should be giving to make this appealing, what should the real price be? It will help you charge more. Patrick McKenzie shout out. Because you're more likely to sell it for the price that it's actually worth. We all have a tendency to undervalue our own work. So here's an example of how I would have priced my book launch, knowing what I know now. First package would have been $39 regular price, discounted by 25% to $29. Next one would have been $119, discounted to $79, so 35%. Next one would have been $249, discounted 45% to $139. And this will really help push people up. And I've used this approach when I've done like Black Friday sales and stuff, and it's worked a lot better than the original discounted pricing that I had. Okay, so nailing the actual launch. How do you actually launch the thing? So this is actually like the easy part of the whole thing. But there's a few steps. So build a sales page. This doesn't have to be anything too fancy. I'll quickly walk you through a sales page for one of my products. Most important thing, well, actually we'll talk about the pieces of this, but I'm just gonna go through this as if I was scrolling. So here's kind of what it looked like. Here's kind of the pieces. Just kind of take them in, pretend you're scrolling through the site. Just kind of outlining some of the content, what's there. It doesn't try too hard to sell you on it because you're gonna see this page coming from an email most likely. We're gonna talk about some of the individual pieces though after we get through the scrolling portion. This is just kind of what's there. So the first thing, important, still include an email sign up. Just because the book is done or the product is done doesn't mean that you should stop collecting emails. A lot of people are tire kickers and they're gonna wanna just check out free content. Once you have their email, you can use that to offer them let them know more about the product, try and sell it to them, put them into an email sequence. Unless your customers are European, then you'll get fined 20 million euros and go to jail now, but no big deal. It's still important, include an email sign up, even though it's done. So that's what I have here. Sign up to get 4 free preview lessons. People sign up, they get the course preview. This works as a really good sort of top of the funnel for me to pitch these people on a discount later, which is a whole other talk. But this is really important. Use testimonials and social proof. Now, if this is the first day that the thing is out, you might not have testimonials and social proof of this product. But if you've been putting out content to test the ideas, you can use that stuff as social proof for the product. So in this case, I sent out preview lessons, and this guy was like, just watch the 2 lessons. Effective immediately, I'm stopping working on my product until I'm done watching this course. He hasn't actually seen the course, but I can still throw this on the sales page because it's still going to help people trust that the content is good. Sort tiers from highest price to lowest price. This is sort of like a visual design hack, but I feel like it worked really well for me. I show the most expensive tier at the top, and I make sure that the visual communicates that it looks like a bigger thing. It's not just like a book with a couple little bonus images. It's like, wow, this is the real thing. And then at the bottom, there's this like piddly little book thing. If you just want the book, fine, just buy it. But this is the real thing. This is what you want. So announce the launch details. So I usually send out an email a couple days before the actual launch. I'm going to link to a site where you can read all the emails that I sent out for this launch, so we won't go into the full details of it. But basically, send out an email saying, okay, I got it done. Here's everything that it's going to include. Here's what the prices are going to be, and this is the day that it's going to launch. In this case, it was 2 days before when I was actually going to launch it. So include all the packaging and pricing details, complete content list if you have it. If you have more free content that you can share, that's always good too. Launch the thing. So this is the easiest part and the most fun part. You send out a really simple email that just says, it's done, all the information is on the landing page. Everyone already knows the pricing and stuff because they saw the other email. Go buy it. Then you just sit back and hope that it goes well and you make a bunch of money. And if you've done all this stuff properly and you built an audience, then you should make that money. So it's just a simple email, not much to it. Everything's on the website. Go check it out. I like Tuesdays. I have no evidence why. Seems like a good day to launch things. Monday seems too early. Every other day seems too late. Tuesdays seem fine. Morning Eastern time works well for me because I have a lot of customers in Europe as well, so trying to manage the time zone stuff is tricky, but yeah, morning Eastern time has worked well for me. Leverage early feedback. So you're not done. You still have more emails to send. First people who bought your book, bought your course, are going to check it out. They're going to think it's awesome. They're going to give you feedback. Catalog that stuff. Couldn't put down Adam's book. 24 hours later, I'm already done. Can't wait to share it with my team. What do I do a couple days later? I send an email to everyone who hasn't bought it yet with all this feedback that I got from people who have already gone through this stuff. And then a bunch more people buy. Send them another free preview if I have something else. Don't be afraid to give away too much free stuff. This book, I gave away like 60% of the content for free to the list. It was fine. No one complained. Lots of people bought it. Closing the launch. Controversial piece of advice. You want to send out an email at the end saying this is the last day to get it at this price. A lot of people will buy it, whatever, right? And pretty obvious thing to do. You need to inform people that this is their last chance to get a discount. The less obvious thing that goes against a lot of the advice that I have seen from other people is I don't recommend specifying a closing date in advance. The biggest mistake I made with my book launch was saying, for the first 3 days, it's discounted. On the third day, I was still getting sales like every 5 minutes. And then at midnight, I changed the pricing. And then no one bought it. And I was like, why did I do this? I had a money hose that was just like firing money at me. And I was just like, oh, we gotta get this under control. We gotta turn this off. I don't want this money. So what I do now is I just say, during the launch, it's gonna be discounted. I don't say when the launch is gonna end. I just kind of assess the situation. I see when are sales starting to slow down. Maybe after 2 weeks, sales have dropped off. Then the Monday of the third week, I'll send out an email. Hey, this is the last week of the launch. This is your last chance to get it at this price. Now I have like another full kind of like smaller launch week almost, instead of just like 1 day, and I make a lot of money doing that too. So here's a link that just goes to a GitHub gist where I have a bunch of links to resources and stuff that I think are helpful, tools, things like that. I'm gonna keep it updated as I talk to people and find out what people are interested in learning more about, so bookmark that. And that's all I got. Thank you very much. I'm Adam Wathan.
All right. Great talk, Adam. We have time for 1, maybe 2 questions. So who's got a question? Anyone got a question? Okay. So we'll take maybe someone over here, and then maybe someone over here.
Adam, lots of great content. Thank you so much. My question has to do with when you were sharing numbers at the beginning of the presentation. You obviously had these big spikes at the beginning when you were launching, but it seemed like you had a fairly significant long tail of revenue on both of those products. Was there anything you did to reprime the pump down the road?
So those charts were actually just for the first 3 days, so it wasn't super long tail. Things that have worked for me is with the TDD course. Because I released it in early access, I was able to update people consistently saying, I've added new content, I've added new content. That gets new people seeing it, buying it, stuff like that, especially because it was still at like an early access price. For the book, sales definitely dropped off very significantly when the launch period was over, which is why I feel like I made a big mistake by closing it after 3 days. I had to sort of scramble to figure out ways to try and get people to buy it who would have bought it at the launch discount, but because I stopped it too early, they just never got around to it. So I sent out like an email saying, hey, I've extended the launch just for people on my email list because I heard from people who said that they missed it and it wasn't quite enough time for them to get approval from their boss or whatever, which is true in a lot of cases, but also sort of a lie. And I didn't really feel great about it. I don't like lying to my audience, but I also don't like artificially limiting the amount of money that I can make when this is what I'm trying to do for a living. So that's why I think of that as a mistake, because it forced me to do some things I really wasn't super happy about. In general, what I do with my products now, I haven't actually done this with the book yet, but I do it with the course still, is that email sign up on the landing page is like super key because it gets people in, gets them the preview lessons, that drops them into an email sequence where I keep sending them free content for like 2 weeks. And if at the end of 2 weeks they haven't bought already, I do some API wizardry to create them a coupon that expires in 5 days. And this is something that I took from Brennan Dunn, and he has a great article on sort of trying to do this sustainable info product stuff, but basically they get an offer to buy it at a significantly discounted price that's going to expire after a certain period of time to get them to make a decision, basically.
Okay. We don't have any more time for questions, but all the speakers are going to be around at lunch and doing workshops, so if you got a question for Adam, you can grab him after this. Mike has a few announcements before lunch.
Yep. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thanks.